All right, it's the top of the hour, so let's begin. Let me welcome everybody to the Future Trends Forum. My name is Brian Alexander. I'm the forum's creator, host, and chief cat herder, and I'll be your moderator for the next hour of conversation. I'm really glad to see all of you here and more still flocking in. But before we dive into our discussion, let me take a few minutes to introduce the forum, explain where it came from, how it works, and what our unusual job is here today. So to begin with, you should know that the forum has been going on for 5 years. We've been running weekly conversations about the future of education, technology, policy, enrollment, and a great deal of other issues. This is an entirely discussion-based venue. We have very, very few slides. What you see here is just about it. This is all about the discussion, the exchange of ideas, reflections, arguments, supporting and facilitation. That's how we do things here. That's its main function and main purpose. That's what we've been doing for almost half a decade. But today we find ourselves in an extraordinary situation. Not in the past 5 years of the lifetime of the forum have we seen such a situation with the world gripped by a global pandemic. Accordingly, we're decided to suspend our normal programming here on the forum and instead to have conversations about coronavirus and COVID-19 to explore their impact on higher education moving forward. Now, we've been doing a lot of different work in order to support this. If you go to this URL, you can find a few different projects and resources, including a how to track the coronavirus link, as well as a spreadsheet of colleges and universities that are closing and or migrating online in the case of this crisis. We've also been doing a bunch of different video conference sessions, more or less along these lines, with the Chronicle of Higher Education, with EdSurge, and with a few others that you'll hear about later on today. Now, before we go further, I want to make sure that I can thank our sponsors, and I also want to show you how to use the technology that we're working with right this moment. So to begin with, I'd like to thank New York State's NYSERNet. That's a nonprofit that helps that state's colleges and universities get online and do great broadband work together. They also do very, very fine professional development, and we're grateful to them for their support. We're also grateful to Shindig because, as you can see, Shindig makes available this technology that we're using right now. So before we go further, let me explain how to use it in order to have the conversation I was just talking about. So first things first, the architecture is pretty unusual. Where we are right now, where I am and where the slide is called the stage. That's because everyone can see and hear everything that goes on this stage. Right below us, you'll see around you either up to 20 or more different logins from around the world. Either they're video feeds like Rohan Jackson, or sometimes they're a static image like Kara Felter. I call it the participant swarm, or the group formerly known as the audience. And Shindig breaks these out into groups of 20. If you'd like to jump from one group to another, just look on either side of your screen. There should be a button so you can try a different room if you'd like. But they all face and they all hear from the stage. Up here on the stage, we can have actually up to 4 people at a time. So this is where you can join us to ask a question, and this is where some of our experts would be as well. Now, how can you ask a question? How can you share these kind of thoughts? There are 2 major ways. If you look at the bottom of the screen, you'll see a few different buttons laid out. The 2 key ones are a raised hand and a question mark. If you hit the raised hand button, that tells us that you want to join us up here on stage. So when the time is right, I will literally press a button and you'll beam upstage right next to me. It's really easy to do, and we do this all the time. Now, if for some reason you can't join us on stage, like if your mic and camera aren't working, or if you are in a space where you can't talk out loud, that's all right. Go to that question mark. If you hit that, then that gives you a little box into which you can type questions or comments. And those I can then flash on the screen so everyone can see them, and I can read them out loud so everyone can hear them, which is a pretty nifty process. Use either of those mechanisms if you'd like to surface questions or pushback or give an example or any of the different ways that we converse. And we're really grateful to Shindig for making available the technology that lets us do just that. I'd also like to thank our supporters on Patreon. If you don't know Patreon, it's a crowdfunding site, and it helps people collaboratively support ongoing projects. In this case, it's our research into the future of higher education. People contribute as little as $1 a month to keep the lights on, And you can see here, these are people that give even more than that. Folks like Michael Huggins, Seth Goodman, Jeff McClurkin, Robin DeRosa. We're really grateful to them for their support. And you can join them if you just go to patreon.com/Brian Alexander. Now, in today's session, what I'd like to do is to have this session focus on coronavirus in higher education. And to do so, to hear from you. We'd like to hear your questions, your thoughts. We'd like to hear about your experiences. In this crowd are a range of people who are either just starting to move a campus online, or who have taken the campus online, or have experienced the epidemic close up at hand. Some of these people have already shut down entire campuses. Some of these people are practitioners engaged in helping faculty make the best possible classes they can online. I'd like to bring some of them up to the stage to hear from, but I'd also like to hear your thoughts. So this is a free-for-all. Consider this a kind of town hall online. And to begin with, we already have some people who have their hands raised up. So I'd like to bring to the stage Yvette Diaz from Ohio State University. And let's see what Yvette has to add. I think she's having a bandwidth issue. No problem. Yvette, if we can't see and hear you, why don't you type in a question? Just hit the question mark button and type it in, and we'll come back. We do have a question that came up immediately from text. I'll put this up here on the stage for everyone to see. This is from George Lorenzo, a wonderful writer, who asks, what are higher education institutions doing to deal with the future possibility of closing and or suspending most campus and classroom activities in the summer and possibly the fall? This is a great question. Right now, George, according to my research, most of the campuses are focused very closely on this semester, the end of spring or winter term, especially those who are in quarters. But looking ahead to the summer and fall, let me put this out to the entire audience. What are you all seeing? Are you seeing any preparations for summer classes? Or are you looking at ways that campuses are thinking about shifting fall, or at least a contingency plan for keeping fall classes online? Great question, George. But what are the rest of you seeing? What are the rest of you hearing? What are you hoping for from this process? And what are some of your anxieties? We'd like to hear from you all. Oops. We have a whole bunch of hands just shot right up. And I'd like to bring up James Genome, who is the Associate Dean of Academic Programs at the Minerva Project. Hello, James.
Hi, Brian. Great to be here.
Oh, it's good to see you. Thanks for coming.
Oh, thanks for convening all of us. This is such an important conversation to be having right now, and we all need to connect with each other and be able to talk through all these really challenging questions.
Agreed. Well, what are you seeing at the Minerva Project? I mean, you have an unusual program. It's only a few years old. How is this impacting your campus, your institution rather, and your students?
Yeah, well, so we have a very unusual model in that all of our academic courses are online, but our students live every semester on 4 different campuses globally. And so even though, teaching online is sort of business as usual for us, it's not for our students, because many of them are wanting to return home. Some of them are wanting to stay where they are. And we, of course, needed to support them, in both cases. We have not shut down any of our campuses. So for students who are not able to or don't want to return to their homes, we're letting them stay there. And obviously the logistics of supporting all of that is a major challenge. But as you said, while we're focusing on that, we're already thinking about summer and fall. Not only thinking about the contingencies for our own students and whether or not they'll be able to go to the rotation cities and the different residences starting in fall, but we're also, we have a lot of academic partnerships with other institutions, and a lot of people are reaching out to us right now, asking if they're not able to have their students or some portion of their students come to campus on fall, what can they do to set up, high quality online programs to meet those needs, rather than the kinds that they've had to throw together very quickly here in response to the immediate challenge.
Well, I have to ask, I mean, institutionally, since you're entirely online, but you have this unusual residential structure, how do you support your faculty in making, in trying to cope with all of this?
It's a great question. One of the biggest challenges has been how to adjust our academic policies in response to, all of the needs that students have right now. I think we've been lucky to not have our students getting sick or anything like that. They're a younger part of the population who are less impacted. But nevertheless, their travel plans have obviously disrupted their ability to come to class. In some cases, once they leave the Minerva campuses, which have very good internet access and so on, they don't have such good access to broadband, and so that disrupts their ability to join class. So we've relaxed and obviously made adjustments to the policies that we have for attendance and submission of work and things like that to respond. And I think that's absolutely necessary right now.
Are you looking, this may be a little too far into the weeds, and this is going to come up again. Are you looking into shifting or giving students more pass-fail options for final grades?
So far we haven't had that request from our students. We have a student body group that communicates with faculty and administration about these kinds of issues. But many of the students, because they're largely able to continue to attend class uninterrupted for the most part, and because we are relaxing some of the policies that we have about attendance and timely submission of work and allowing them to, to make up for that. We don't see a big impact on their grades. And of course, they want the letter grades for their GPA and so on if they can get them. So far, we haven't gotten a lot of requests, but we'll certainly consider it if we get them.
Well, thank you for saying that. James, can I keep you up here on stage for a few minutes? There's
Absolutely.
People who want to join us. I want to bring them up and give them a chance. I think it'd be great to hear from all of you together. Let me just bring up Lisa Hinchliff, who is at the University of Champaign-Urbana, who is a fantastic librarian and absolutely delightful person to have. So let's bring up Lisa. Hello, can you see us?
I can see you. Can you see me?
Beautifully. It's so good to see you. Thank you.
Yeah, Christine is here too. I don't know if you can grab her as well.
Oh, I'll do that right now.
During this time, because I particularly logged in, of course, because Brian, you suggested that maybe people would like to hear about the work that Christine and I are in the process of doing these days about what our academic library is doing to help support their campuses and their students, and also protect their staff and their operations during this time.
Let me just explain. We brought up we brought up Christine Wolf-Heisenberg, who is a former guest and a wonderful person who's done terrific work at Ithaca SNR. And we're delighted to see both of you here. Why don't you explain, Lisa, about what this project is that you're talking about?
Sure. So I have to absolutely be clear that this is a project that Christine and I have done together, and practically every moment of the day. I think the past 10 days or whatever. It's what a day is our common thing. So a week ago yesterday, Christine tweeted out, "Hey, is anyone tracking what academic libraries are doing?" And I had looked the day before and said I couldn't find anything, and I messaged her. I was like, "Hey, maybe we should do something." And we jumped on the phone less than a half an hour later, and that was 10 a.m. Eastern time. And at 8 p.m. Eastern time, we put in the field a survey to collect the data on what academic libraries were doing and feed it back out in real time with an instrument that we had reviewed the literature for, done rapid prototyping and cognitive walkthroughs, and built out a dashboard for real-time reporting. So it was kind of a day.
It's been a really good whirlwind.
What's the easiest way everybody can find us?
Sure. So tinyurl.com/COVID library is where we've put up the portal. And I mean, since then we've built out, I don't know, Christine, like 5 dashboards of different kinds of reporting.
Yeah, it's probably getting closer to a dozen at this point, but yes.
Yeah, but
and we have close to 700 libraries now that have logged their responses on
Wow.
what's going on at their institution, what's going on with their library building and hours, and how they're pivoting services online. It's a short survey, so as far as like the labor involved in taking it, it's quite easy. We hope. We're hearing that it takes about 5 minutes to complete, but we've gotten almost 700 institutions responding, and about 250 of them have also given us updates, which is particularly helpful so that we can start to track what's happening, not just over time with individual libraries, but how these decisions get made over time within a single institution.
Oh, excellent.
Yeah, and if I can just say also one other thing, just in case people are interested in this. Incidentally, we didn't seek to do this. We were trying to think about, well, what could be impacting library decisions? And one of those was also whether the students are still in residence. So our survey, Brian, your spreadsheet is also there for what institutions are doing with classes. So we're collecting that as well on ours, but also whether students are in residence any longer. And so to our knowledge, this incidentally has become the only data set where we can say, okay, what are institutions with students in residence doing about those students who are in residence?
Oh, great. Well, what are your conclusions? Before, I mean, I don't mean that to sound so very formal. Maybe what are your observations so far looking at this unique data set?
Christine, you want to start with our 2 blog posts and then our updates?
Sure. Yeah. So we initially, so this went into the field last Wednesday. By Friday, we had our first blog post up, and the conclusion at that point was not that much has changed. And then we waited a couple more days, and on Sunday we issued a second blog post of the next 48 hours, the first 4 days or so of data collection. And the findings from there showed actually quite a lot of change, quite a lot of libraries reducing hours, reducing locations that are open, and really expanding remote work to allow virtual services to continue to happen. And Lisa, maybe you want to say a word or two about just how well libraries are positioned to kind of make this happen at this point.
You had a great tweet about this.
Yeah, and then Inside Higher Ed did a really nice coverage today. And I want to point out that URL that I gave, the tinyurl.com/COVID library, all the dashboards are there. The media coverage of our survey is there. So this article in Inside Higher Ed that I just mentioned is linked there, as well as data collections about academic libraries in Canada, Europe, and the UK, and the public libraries in the United States. There's also a section there where we've tried to link out to other library reporting. So from my perspective, and Brian, I know you know this, I had the privilege of being the president of the Association of College and Research Libraries in 2010, 2011, which unbelievably is a decade ago now. But already at that point, we were a decade into the digital turn in academic libraries. So here we are now in 2020. Academic libraries have been spinning up a very robust digital library complement to our in-person services, because in reality, every user is remote from the library. They just sometimes come in. And so, we have the fortunate position that we are in, that while we are drawing down very clearly, as our survey shows, our physical on-site provision of services, libraries have a very robust sort of, if you will, parallel set of services that are digital. And I also am seeing, this is more anecdotal and observational. Not surprisingly, as I would expect of my profession, libraries are just pulling out all the stops they can to move as much content that is needed for classes that might have been only available in print to the electronic realm, including, we were really fortunate to have a coalition of our leading copyright librarians across major universities in the US issue a statement that was a fair use analysis of the circumstances that we are currently in, and the degree to which fair use essentially makes it possible that if there's something that for some reason we had only in print, that in most cases, fair use will cover us for, at least right now, digitizing that and putting it online. So
fair use copyright expansion.
Yeah, well, I think what they would argue, and I would agree with, is it's not expansion. This is exactly what fair use is intended to do.
Oh.
It is intended to make it possible for us to serve for intellectual work to serve the community while also preserving the livelihood of the author and everything. In reality, let's just be clear: if there's a print book right now that's on print reserve in the library,
Mhm.
we're not going to order 400 copies of it and deliver it out. So that's not the option. So there's no, I really don't think
Good.
like authors aren't losing out because if we suddenly were to digitize a couple chapters or something in order to push those out to students.
That's fantastic.
So again, it's not I would argue it's not the expansion of fair use. I think it is actually the exercise of fair use. And
I love hearing that.
yeah, so
We have to keep learning.
really great statement. Yeah, sorry, I could just obviously talk about all the great things libraries are doing. So
I'm glad that you're here representing libraries. Please don't go away. There are going to be more questions coming up, but I want to clear the deck here just for a second, just so I can
absolutely.
clear a few more folks who are just
Thanks, Brian.
Yep. Thank you all for this terrific work. I'd like to add, speaking of leaders in this field, I would like to welcome Noah Pincus from Duke. Noah, hi, can you see us and hear us?
I can see you and hear you, Brian.
Fantastic. I'm so glad to see you. Noah Pincus. I keep calling you Pincus. It is Pincus, of course. Noah is an extraordinary person, friends, because he seems to be, as far as I can tell, one of the few people who have gone through the pandemic process twice. He has transitioned Duke University's Kunshan campus online already in February, and now he's helping do the same thing for Duke's main campus right now. So I think I'm honored to have him here, and I would love to hear what are a couple of the lessons that you learned from this extraordinary couple of cycles.
Thanks, Brian. We're all learning this in real time, and it's amazing how in 3 days, everyone has caught up and then leapfrogged, and we're learning from each other.
Yeah.
But it is true that DKU, our campus in China, went online February 24th. And we teach in 7-week modules. And so we're about to launch our last module on March 23rd. So we're making the transition there from having done it partway through to starting a new one. And then Duke, we're in the middle of transitioning to start completely new March 23rd also. I think that maybe there are a couple of things of experiences that we've had that are useful here. The first is being clear that on the one hand, we're really just providing first aid here. This is not long-term care. There's a lot of desire that people have for very complicated ways of making the transition. And our focus has been on no new systems, use the systems you have, work with the structures that you have. People have lots of technologies they want to use, but we have two operating principles. One is obviously quality and the other is equity. And whenever you introduce different technologies with people in different time zones, you run into a lot of problems there. I think the second point is that, ironically, as much as we're focused on first aid, this will come as no surprise to Minerva and other folks who've been doing this all along. When you move online, there's a lot more intentionality that the faculty are putting into their courses. And we have already got the evaluations from the last session we just completed. And there are both a lot of things we're learning and working on, but there's a lot of improved teaching and improved learning that's going on right now. So I don't want that first aid metaphor to go too far. And if I could offer one last point, and that is that on the one hand, we try to decentralize as much of the decision making as we can to the lowest level so people can make it in a localized way. But we're also very prescriptive about trying to provide the principles and what you can do and you can't do, that people can be creative within. If you're not prescriptive at the broad level, the decentralization doesn't work for you.
That's a tricky balance to strike.
It is, but I think that it's it's the secret most creative people know, which is you can be much more creative within established parameters than if you just said, I don't know, figure out how to use this thing and go online.
Yeah.
So we have a daily newsletter coming out from our learning innovation team. We have webinars running every day that are recorded. We have a series of FAQs that are constantly upgraded. James was talking about this. Both our campuses have had to identify essentially variations on pass-fail policies. You're seeing this at MIT. You're seeing it at WashU, at a variety of places. And a lot of the hardest part we're finding right now is messaging to students and their parents why this policy is right for this institution, even if it's different than another one. Because the students are all crowdsourcing every other policy and saying, why can't we have that one?
We just got in a comment. I'll just flash this on the screen quickly from Mark Rush at Washington Lee University in Virginia. They just shifted to credit, non-credit for the remainder of winter and for their Maymester as well. Thank you, Mark.
So Brian, if it's helpful, I think one of the question is partly where you set the default. So Mark at Washington and Lee, I think there's a lot of wisdom to doing that, where if the default is credit, no credit, but students can opt into a letter grade. We think preserving the student's choice is really crucial here. Many of our students in our Chinese campus are doing very well and want to preserve the letter grade. At DKU, we've opted into extending the option for credit, no credit in some circumstances. So where you set the default sends a different signal, but those are just variations on a theme.
Thank you. That's a fantastic dive right through what you've just been extracting on the fly for the past few weeks. Can I keep you on stage for a second and bring in somebody else as well?
Sure.
Because we have a lot of people who are lining up. And let me just bring up Jeff Ritter from La Roche University, where he is the chair of the humanities. So let's see. I think you need to unmute yourself, Professor Ritter. You're still muted. I think you need to unmute yourself. No, you need to grab that mic.
Yeah.
No, we can't hear you right now. We'll come back to you, but make sure that you unmute yourself. We also have a whole bunch of people lined up here. We have Julie Uranus, who is from UPCEA, where she is the VP for Online and Strategic Initiatives. Hello, Julie.
Hi, everyone. How are you?
Good. Good to see you again.
Good. So I wanted to kind of go back to someone's earlier question about what folks are thinking about in terms of fall term and beyond. Brian, I've kind of been surfing every known news source, it seems, these days to try and push out good information to folks. I would say that those decisions are still being held for a little bit. Some, I would believe that there are some institutions that are actually already making those decisions, but we have to understand that this is kind of we're weighing the safety of our communities against the supports that we can build for our students if we were to go online, against regulations that we may be faced with, and then in terms of how this all may cascade for future, having future implications, like when we see pass fails and what does that do in terms of grad admissions, the fact that we're not having, the LSAT this year and all of those entrance exams are canceled. And so when we think about the fall term, it is really in a state of flux right now for a lot of institutions as to how that will be delivered. Two of the most important things that I think a lot of folks are waiting on is what Homeland Security will do regarding our international students, as well as what Veterans Affairs will do in terms of our military students, because we both know that there are conditions on online learning for those two populations. And those two populations are significant constituencies on our campuses. So folks, unfortunately, a lot of this is wait and see. I think a lot of your leaders are looking ahead, but we are still trying to gather that information.
What do you see as the special challenges facing military students?
So for military students, they actually receive less housing if they are engaged in online learning. And so it could have a serious and profound effect on our military veterans and active duty, but mostly our vets, that, they just won't receive the housing that they so desperately need. Just because you're engaged in online learning doesn't mean you don't need a roof over your head. And so the distinction that's been made by Veterans Affairs we know that it's a problem for students. And we also know that the guidance that was recently issued, and then I think it was rescinded, which was basically keep on keeping on with our current regs, meant that any institution that is in the quarter system that's going to end their term soon and move on to a new term, if they start that new term 100% online, that it will immediately trigger a reassessment of that housing for our vets. So we're waiting for legislation or some change in that and anticipating that. I think it's working its way around in these in the coronavirus bills that we see, but we're still waiting for some clarity around that.
What state do you live in?
I live in Georgia.
Okay, so it could either be Georgia State or it could be federal.
Oh no, this is definitely federal. This is Veterans Affairs.
Okay, so we're specifically with them then. Okay, very good.
Yeah, no. I mean, this impacts all of our institutions.
We have a question that follows right up on this. I want to put this up on the screen. I'd love to hear from both of you about this. This is from Eve Wong at Fairfax University. And she asks, or she raises, we have mostly an international population and they want to withdraw and return to their home countries. We don't know how to advise these students of visa-related concerns. We do not have dorms. Oh. And I'll put that back up on the screen again so you can see it. Any suggestions or thoughts?
Yeah, honestly, Eve, I'd have to take a look at the guidance that Homeland Security issued. I think it was that last week about, but it was very specific about students that would remain enrolled and be engaged in online learning, that they didn't necessarily need to leave because their instruction had moved online. And there had been some conversation, that, folks were working through that, but I'm not sure in terms of if someone actually wants to go back to their home country, what that puts their visa status as.
Oh, Eve, if you want to join us up on stage, just click the raised hand button and we can hear from you. It's a good question. Thank you for asking that. We have a question as well from Catherine Velberg, who is the Dean of Science, Math, and Education. She asks, priorities for us focus on student health and safety and on their ongoing quality of learning. We have moved fully online as of yesterday. Resources to faculty to do this quickly are needed.
So, Brian, I might be able to comment on that, but also in a way that relates to the last question.
Great.
And this may be obvious, so forgive me if everyone's already doing this, but I don't know the answer to the visa-related question, but we at Duke, we have this, and a bunch of institutions have. There is so much information that's been put online as guidance to our own students and faculty and staff, that if you have a question that you're not getting an obvious answer to, or you don't know it at your institution, if you go, like we have sites, Keep Learning, Keep Teaching, Keep Working. And if you go to them, obviously our institution may be different than yours, but you'll find a lot of information there that can help quickly get you up to speed on some things. For instance, on the faculty teaching one, we so at DKU in China, everybody was already using Sakai. Our faculty were already, they hadn't been teaching online, but they were well prepared to use that for asynchronous teaching. At Duke, it's a bigger institution. Not everybody is using Sakai. If you go to our Keep Teaching website, you'll see that there's a lot of different strategies out there, including an emphasis on low-tech strategies as well. There's a lot of faculty, some of them are not familiar with the technology, or many of them don't want to teach that way. And we are talking about remote delivery, not online learning. And being able to distinguish that for your faculty and to give them options for how they can do low-tech kind of strategies is a great relief to faculty. And so, again, I only know our website, but we've borrowed a lot from the University of Michigan's Center for Innovation and Teaching. I forget the exact title. There's just an enormous amount of stuff being shared and all under Creative Commons licenses. So I encourage people to do that.
Yeah, and I would also add to that, folks, if you haven't accessed it yet, and I don't know, Brian, if you can pop it up on the screen, is Daniel Stanford's list of teaching resources that institutions are sharing. I think there's over 300 entries. I know Duke, I know Michigan's on that. Not to give you a homework assignment, but I would imagine, regardless of what institution you are and what technology you're using, there's someone that looks like you. You might have to, click on a few of those links, but you're likely to find an institution that has Zoom, Google, and Blackboard, to name a few, or a variation of Canvas, this and that, to where you can actually take a look at resources. It might take you a little bit of time to find someone that looks like you, but you will find someone that has your technology profile and you can access their resources. Many of our vendors are making their training videos a lot more apparent on their websites, just so that we all can link to them. So as you start thinking through this process of what you're offering and look to your peers, we've got a great list of peers that are sharing broadly what they've made available to their communities.
That is Brian, it might be worth mentioning what Coursera's done here. Because they made it available to us at DKU more than a month ago, and I think it's been now made widely available.
Yeah.
And what we've told our faculty is, if you don't have a 6-minute lecture on this chemistry principle, there may already be a very good one. You can use it, and then your handcrafted teaching component is the layer on top of that. But everyone doesn't have to record all their own 6-minute videos, especially when many faculty start by recording an hour and a half and discovering why that's not a good idea. And so being able to cut and paste, mash up, use the Coursera programming has been terrific, because it really opened things up for faculty.
Excellent. Thank you for sharing that. And both of you, I wanted to thank you for adding the sheer importance of us collaborating and sharing information right now. This is a time when many people will feel that they want to draw in and withdraw, but instead, this is a great time for collaboration. Speaking of which, Jeff, do we have you?
Yeah, I'm here.
All right.
Hi.
Good to hear you.
All right. Good. Sounds good. Very interesting stuff going on. And one of the things I noticed was we had a couple of workshops very early with 5-10 people spread out widely. But one of the things that happened in those was the person doing the workshop was doing a certain style of teaching. And when you talk about faculty and professors, style of teaching is like, that's the reason for being in the game, is we all have our own style of teaching. So, a nursing professor, a chemistry professor, literature, communication, technology, we're all such different kinds of people doing different things. And what I found was missing, and I'd like to see maybe we can create something online, matching up people with experience, with somebody who's doing the same style of teaching, who wants to do the same style of teaching, whether it's a tests and midterms and specific true false question type of memorization, or somebody who's a looser kind of discussion oriented stream of consciousness kind of teacher too. Some teachers want to use all the technology and have it all linked together and have everything fit into the grade. And some are minimal. Some are I just want to use the minimum amount that I really need to do and make it happen. So maybe we need some sort of place for a mentor or mentee kind of relationship. Because again, that's the other part, is sitting in a classroom as a student and trying to learn online learning. That did not work for me. I had to have either do it myself, which I did over the years as it began, or as I worked with people who were new to it, one-on-one. That's the way it worked best. Somebody who understood the way I wanted to teach and what technology I needed. When I've seen some of the people who were matched up at my school, I thought, oh no, this is going to not work. Somebody's going to be too many digressions, too many paths, when this person really wants, give me the step-by-step simplest method of doing things. So maybe we need a place to match people up, and I would be glad to do that for only people around the country. If they like the same style, let's find a way to match those people up. The other main thing that I've been thinking about is we certainly should have had more lead time on this. The government really fell flat on its face with this, not giving us a longer period of time to say something's coming, this is going to be impactful. And now we're finding out more and more about how it was known in advance. We really should have known. But summer and fall, we haven't done anything. We have no plans for summer and fall. We don't even know about graduation at this point. But some of the inside higher ed articles and commentaries are about, this is an inflection point. This could be a point of change for higher ed. The 4-year model, residential model, may become more flexible because of this, with a 2-year, 3-year, initially at home after high school, working and taking online, and then coming to school, or ending school outside of the residential model. So I think we have a lot of opportunities here for some creative thinking about it, and that's really where a lot of my energy is going right now, is saying, how's this going to help us change what needs to be changed, and maybe adapt. But I really like the comment about that he made originally about, it's making some teachers better teachers, because now they, instead of doing the same old thing, they've got to think, what am I really trying to teach here? Because that's the first thing I ask somebody that I'm working with who wants to learn online learning. What are you really trying to teach? What's the main thing you want? Is it vocabulary? Is it thought patterns? Is it future thinking? You really got to know what you're going for, because it's not the same, just doing the same old thing.
This is great. Jeff, can I keep you on stage for a few minutes?
Sure.
We have a bunch of questions, and Noah and Julie, I'd love to hear all three of your thoughts on this. We have a question from Doyle Frisney, who typically asks a deep question. Could this be the end of universities charging a premium fee for online courses?
Should be a discount. Really, and that's one of the things people are saying is, why am I paying the same thing for an online class? Yeah. If it was space, air conditioning, and heating, and desks and technology, why am I paying for that? Yeah, it could be a change.
Well, I would like to say hi to Doyle. Doyle and I, our paths crossed when I worked in Kentucky for a time. So hi, Doyle. I would say this is that true online learning, we know, is often more expensive in execution, in the development, in terms of the multimedia that's needed, potentially building simulations to truly move a course online. Remote teaching, on the other hand, not, we can leverage existing technology. So when we look at those cost structures, they're slightly different depending on how you interpret online learning. I would say this, Doyle, is that if we're going to start seeing a shift in university budgets to devote university dollars from budget to online learning and the production of true online learning, I think, yes, then the cost that we've passed along to students to support those efforts could fade away. But it would require a commitment from institutions to say, yes, we are going to put X amount of dollars into the captioning and transcribing of all videos. that no longer is a cost borne by the Division of Online Learning, and a few other things. So I think we need to have a conversation. What this crisis might do for us is really have us questioning some of these budget models that exist on our campuses that force those costs to be directed down to students, when they could be there could be some reallocation, or there's some resource conversations on campuses.
Oh, that's a good point. That brings up another question that actually James Genone asked, and I'll just flash this on the screen here, which was the economic impact of the crisis on students and family will make it more difficult to pay for college and reduce enrollments. I would add to that, to the extent, whatever extent we have of economic downturn for the next month or few months or a year, that's also going to depress state revenues, which is going to depress their funding for public universities as well. Would you all like to take a whack at that, Julie or Jeff or Noah?
It could be the first part of the next group of closings, with enrollment problems so tight, with enrollments just, the impact of 20, 25 students on an incoming class on a small college is huge. And it could be people saying, oh, we have to put this off. We haven't had the income. But if the costs can lower, if we can lower the costs because of this and find new models for the whole thing, and we lower the costs, we could keep those kids coming to school. I mean, it really is that opportunity.
So I think Jeffrey's exactly right that on the one hand, we're all looking at various forms of existential crisis, from being pushed off the cliff to just having vastly reduced budgets. On the other hand, we've been bumping along for at least 10 or 15 years with conversations about innovation and change and new models. Minerva has pioneered one version of it. We know the story. ASU has another version. There's Brian, you've been writing about this. David Staley has a new book out on it. If we spend 95% of our time focused on just the hemorrhaging, we're never going to deal with that. And I mean that at all levels of institutions. I recognize there's a lot of variation here. But to the degree to which there are blockages in the conversations we've had, like, does going online mean the death of humanities? Do we really have to replay that for the next 20 years? Or can we take Jeffrey's point and think about the opportunities that are available for different forms of teaching and learning that position the humanities as robustly as they should be positioned? If we can use this to get beyond those blockages, I hate to say use this, but if we can react to it, then, that's a different, that may help us in a very long run kind of way. Obviously, in the short run, there's a lot of pain.
Right. I would say this in terms of attendance and affordability is that when we saw conditions could play out similar to what we saw in the last recession. If you'll remember, going back to 2007, 2008, there were a lot of reskilling programs that states were rolling out and encouraging retraining. Many of our community college colleagues benefited from those because they had filled classrooms in many of their career and technical areas. I was in Michigan at the time, and so I know exactly, those dollars were highly vocational, like they wanted to train teachers and nurses and stable careers. So while there is, yes, this is a very serious point in time for us, both from a community safety standard as well as an economic forecast going forward. But know that there are a lot of drivers that change our fortunes, and depending on what incentives we see from the feds. I'm not going to say it's all, sunshine, but I also don't want to be Debbie Downer about what we're facing, is that we are key points in our communities, and, being real and good contributors to our communities. Ultimately, we know what drives folks to college. And some of that is that traditional student behavior, but some of it is finding us a key resource in a lifelong, lifelong learning.
I'm conscious of time, friends, and somehow we are 10 minutes from the end of the hour. And I wanted to quickly address one logistical question that came up. Karen Bieber asks, "Is this being recorded?" Yes, and it'll appear on our playlist on YouTube very, very soon. And someone else asked if these are open. Absolutely, anybody with a URL is welcome to come in. I love the fact that Noah and Julie, you articulate very, very different positions on a spectrum of where this could take us. That's one of the reasons I wanted to have this as a discussion and a conversation. We had another question that follows up precisely on what you were discussing. Let me bring this up. It was about the community college angle. This is from Noel Radomski, who asks, how are community and technical colleges, which have degree programs that require an end of the program clinical requirement and national boards, how are they handling these two important program requirements? And Julie, if you could just start us off, and Noah and Paul, if you have any thoughts, that'd be great.
Yeah, you know what? I wish I had some good answers for you, Noel. I know that if you look at the Facebook group that's been started by the Chronicle, there's over 10,000 members of that Facebook group right now of higher ed folks like you asking this question, and folks like you are asking this question because for those highly technical fields, we have not built the simulations we need to build to execute on some type of experience that would achieve similar learning objectives and outcomes that we would expect from those programs. A lot of institutions, there are some that are saying, well, you know what, if we can't have more than 10 students, we're going to bring them in at, 9 student groups, and we're going to, this is how we're going to finish their clinicals and those in-person experiences. I'd actually kind of defer to anyone else on this call because I don't have a good solution for you, and I'm not seeing any good solutions out there right now, and I've been looking.
Well, thank you, Jeff. Noah, did you want to give that a shot?
It's going to be the national organizations themselves, I think, the certifying organizations who are going to have to come up with a solution for that. I don't think the schools could do it. You don't want the schools to each do their own. You want to have some sort of system.
Yeah.
So they better be working on it. I hope so.
If I can suggest, as an example, the Dance Studies Association has actually put out guidance on performing arts and particularly dance programs and how those might be conducted. Those are performance-based. I don't know if there's going to be anything that you can use there, Noel, but you might want to go to the Dance Studies Association and see if there's something that maybe is adaptable or maybe triggers something that maybe you're the person who finds the solution and shares it.
Well, thank you. And thank you for the question, Noel. And let me thank the three of you. We have a few more questions and people with their hands up. So let me just clear the decks. Thank you all three for your excellent comments and thoughts. And let me bring up an old friend of the program who has some important news for everybody, I think. This is Perry Sampson, who is not only a former guest, but also a meteorology professor at my alma mater, the University of Michigan. Perry, you need to turn your mic on. It's muted right now.
There we go. Can you hear me?
Perfectly. Hello.
Good to see you, Brian.
Good.
Brian, I was sitting here just commiserating about the issues I'm running into in the trenches, trying to teach here from home, having taught in the classroom for 40 years. And the changes I'm going through, but having heard the stories from Jeff and Julie and others, I'm feeling a whole lot better about myself right now. Just a couple things that I wanted to share, and following up on what people were talking about. One of the important things I heard was the value of creating community, because we are all in this new world and trying to figure out how to move our way through it. And we're finding ways to do that among groups. Here's an idea, I'll just throw it out there, that I've started here at the University of Michigan is every so often now I have a get together online like this with other instructors to simply commiserate and talk about our teaching at the end of the day, and it's called a Keganar. So it's kind of like a webinar with more fun. Just throw that out and you can copy that idea and run with it. My interest is about, okay, so we're going to teach online. How does that change the way we teach? I've got a great deal of thought about this. I've been doing this for a long time. As you know, Brian, I've been involved in entrepreneurial efforts. One of them created a tool called Lecture Tools so that I could teach to my class. And that involved and was acquired by a company called Echo 360. And one of the things I want to make sure that people hear about today is an offer from that company, God bless them, that now we are offering free online tools so you can teach your class. I heard it also being discussed that about transcription. This system that they're offering allows the instructor to teach online from wherever they are to their students. It allows them to present their slides to their students and importantly, it cannot be business as usual. You have to think about how are you going to do formative assessment? How are you going to be sampling the students to understand what they don't understand? And it takes a lot of effort for you to be able to ask questions, get responses, and communicate with students. I built this tool originally because I had a class of 100 students, and I didn't know how to interact with that many students.
Right.
Now I have a class of 250 in a class called Extreme Weather. And I got my experience because a year ago, you'll appreciate this, Brian, it got so cold here in Michigan that they shut the university down. And the polar vortex, and I teach a class in extreme weather. I was not about to not teach class that day.
Right.
So I learned to use these tools to broadcast to my students wherever they were and are. The important news here is you can pose questions to your students. The students can pose questions to you, and the students can even indicate when they're confused as class is going on. You have a meter showing you how many students are confused. So it's a great way to think about how to take the things that we're doing in the live classroom and now move it to a world that is online. And I hope that people offer this. I think the next slide actually has the link. If you would show that, Brian.
Okay, in the bottom
you want to try this out, there's the link right there. You can sign up. It's free, and it's free through at least the summertime. That you should try this as a way for you to be able to conduct class, and that includes automatic transcription. So whatever's being said during the class session will be available to the students as a transcription, and that comes built in with this system.
Okay, so automatic, is that human generated or software generated?
It's software generation. I'm helping them work on new technologies that actually take the things that you're presenting in class, slice it up, do OCR on what you're presenting, use those words to try to improve the quality of the transcription. It's not necessarily quality good enough for closed captioning, but it's good enough that most people can now read what was going on in class.
Well, thank you for sharing that. I mean, on the one hand, that this is a generous thing, and it reminds me of how some other vendors and companies have been sharing theirs openly. But also, it's just for me a delight to see you with 40 years of the classroom still passionate about teaching and figuring out new ways to connect with students. Hang on there just for a second. I want to, before we go, I want to bring up one more person here. This is the wonderful Jeannie Kim Han, a great friend of the program for a long time. And over the past week, she did something which I think some of you may have seen so far. Jeannie, didn't you just take, I think, 72 hours and put an entire conference online just like that?
We sure did. We took the ASSE conference, the Alliance for Hispanic Serving Institution Educators conference that was supposed to be in Fort Lauderdale, Florida. And with the help of Shindig and with Steve Gottlieb, the co-founder, or the founder, I should say, of Shindig, we were able to actually transition the entire in-person conference for 400 people to a virtual conference in 72 hours. So it was a huge lift. 60 workshops, national presenters, high-level executives.
16 or 60 workshops?
60. Yeah. So we were able to do that, and we did it successfully. Everybody was very grateful. People were they were thrilled with the fact that they were able to have a high level of engagement, using the Shindig platform.
Yeah.
And the presenters were actually quite thrilled with the fact that they were able to get their messages out and share the materials that they had. We've also been actually working at Riverside Community College District. We're a 3-college district and in California. And we are taking all of our classes online and effective March 23rd. So all of our classes will transition by March 23rd and be online, with the exception of some of our intensive labs and our nursing programs, etc. So that previous question about nursing programs, we've got one of the largest nursing programs in the state of California. And we are making the transitions right now. And we are anticipating that we will not have a regular semester at all. Here in California, people have probably heard the news, but graduations for the CSU, the California State University system, have all been canceled. And UCs and community colleges, probably all the way through, it's going to follow suit. So we are anticipating that we will not go back to in-person instruction, at least until the summer, possibly to the fall. So that is sort of what we are preparing for at this point in time.
Well, thank you for that dual snapshot, both of your institution and your state, as well as of this conference. Friends, I hate to say this, but we are right at the end of our time. And so to kind of mark that end, I want to bring up a quick question. I don't want you to answer this right now. I want everybody to think about this. This is from Adam at Catalyst, who asked, do we think the pandemic is something that will shape a new normal in higher ed, or is it just something we must overcome on the way back to business as usual? That's a huge question, and it's one that we need to be thinking about as we go, because we've been diving into a whole bunch of different details so far, but I think the questions are also massively, massively in play. Hey, Jeannie, thank you so much for being here. Jeannie, for your incredible experience, and Perry for this great offer, as well as your experience. My thanks to Noah, to Julia, to Jeff, to everybody else who came. Let me take 1 minute to point out where we're going next week. It seems like this is not going away. That the COVID crisis is one that's simply going to continue. And as a result, I would like to make sure that the Future Transform continues these kind of conversations. Yes, they're open to anybody. Yes, they're recorded and they'll be available for everybody. And we'll be able to discuss the kind of issues that we're talking about, everything from the role of military students to class grading policies to national certification systems, fall summer issues. Next week, we're going to have a slight focus on technology in this process, and our co-conspirator, our partner in crime, will be the Campus Technology magazine. So this is going to be a joint Future Transform Campus Technology special program. So you're all welcome, and we'll be sending out the link for that shortly. If you'd like to keep discussing all of these issues, and I'm sure all of you will, you can go back to our archive of previous videos, and those will have a lot of fodder. You can also head over to different places in social media. On Twitter, we use the hashtag FTTE. We have groups on LinkedIn, Facebook, a group on Slack, and we'd love to hear from you all. In the meantime, thank you all so much for contributing your thoughts in this extraordinary time. Thank you for your patience. Thank you for your generosity of spirit. I think we'll do better the more kind of conversations we have like this. In the meantime, see you online, and please stay safe. Take care. Bye-bye.